Hey guys, welcome back to the CreditVerse channel. If you're new here, my name is Alyan, and I had the chance to fly Turkish Airlines A350-900 in business class from Istanbul to Berlin a couple of months ago. Now this was all the way back in February, it's currently the beginning of September, but we just had the chance to edit the video and get it out to you guys. I hope you guys enjoy, and let me know what you want me to review next time. To get to the airport, we chose to forego rideshare services and instead trust Istanbul's public transit system to get us from Taksim Square to the airport. To do this, we first had to hop on a bus, and then take the M11 metro up to the airport. The entire journey took about 90 minutes, but there's certainly some variance here. You can call a taxi through the Uber app, but they're metered and can sometimes run a decent chunk over the price you might be quoted, so just beware. It's definitely a better way to get to the airport. I think we were just trying to have a bit too much fun. With Turkish Airlines not offering first class on any of its planes, business class is really their flagship product, and that's evident from the moment you arrive at the airport. They've gone all out to make the experience feel premium, starting right from the ground. For the smoothest journey, you'll want to use Door 5, which is the dedicated priority entrance for the business class passengers. Step inside, and you're instantly greeted by one of the most visually stunning airports in the entire world. The vaulted ceilings are masterpieces in and of themselves, inspired by the grand bazaars and mosques of Istanbul. They blend European and Islamic architectural influences with sweeping arches and intricate geometric patterns that add a sense of elegance and calm to an otherwise bustling terminal. Unlike the standard roped-off priority lanes you'd find at most airports, Turkish takes the business class check-in experience to a whole new level with a dedicated self-contained checking area. A space that feels more like a mini airport lounge than really just a check-in counter. From the moment you step inside, the difference is clear. Instead of standing in a crowded queue, you're welcomed into a comfortable seating area where a mix of tables, lounge chairs, and plush couches create a relaxed environment where you can just settle in for a few moments. This did lead me to the first of the nitpicks here. Leaving on a Sunday afternoon, there was a pretty decent line to check in, and even with several counters open, it took a good 15 minutes just to print off our boarding passes, which I wouldn't call ideal. Once formalities are complete, passengers are seamlessly got into the fast-track security lane, which is effectively connected to the check-in area. As expected, the fast-track process immigration is efficient and hassle-free, and within minutes you emerge airside, ready to experience the best of Istanbul Airport. Unlike the sterile, utilitarian layouts of most airports, this place feels deliberately grand, more like a modern interpretation of an Ottoman palace than just a transit hub. Expansive walkways are lined with high-end boutiques, gourmet cafes, and Turkish delicacy shops, all set beneath the same towering vaulted ceiling seen at the entrance. The terminal's open concept design really ensures a seamless flow of passengers, while natural light floods through the massive glass panels, creating an airy and inviting atmosphere. Like most other airports in the region, you can utilize any remaining lira, or whatever currency you choose, on the wide range of duty-free stores at the airport. Of course, there is the usual suspects such as Louis Vuitton and Hermes, but some you probably wouldn't expect, like Canada Goose. Of course, for us plebeians, there's a much more normal duty-free, which has tons of chocolates, Turkish confectionery, wines, champagnes, souvenirs, pretty much anything you can think of in a duty-free, this place has it. While we definitely could have spent our time walking around the terminal, to get our money's worth, we decided to go to the Turkish Airlines Business Class Lounge, accessible via this escalator. As you enter, you're greeted by the staff, who direct you to the automatic gates, after which you're greeted by this gargantuan screen. For some context, this lounge is over 60,000 square feet, so there is a lot to go over. Starting with food, which is obviously my favorite. Instead of one large buffet area with all the dining, DK has really scattered the dining options across the entire floor plan, ensuring you're not really far from some nourishment, no matter what corner of the lounge you end up in. Each food stand also comes with its own seating, once again being a mix of chairs and couches. Most of these food stations are staffed by live chefs, cooking up Turkish classics for the guests to enjoy warm and fresh. For the cold food options, there's a mix of vegetables and cheeses in case you want to fix yourself a salad. Not sure why, because the other food is just so much better. Unsurprisingly, within all of the food, my favorite section was the dessert one. They're the standard selection of cakes and desserts, but my favorite are definitely the Turkish desserts. Baklava and tulumba are two things I really can't get enough of, and there is an endless supply available here. Now, with alcohol being a bit of a touchy subject in Turkey, you wouldn't find as expansive of a bar as you would in other similar lounges, with a small wine cart here instead. This certainly has the most diverse food options of any lounge I've been in. Of course, you have those Turkish classics, but then just quite a bit more. It's pretty neat. I'm also going to add in here that the food tastes pretty unique compared to other lounges I've been in. It has much more of a home-style feel and taste, which after being homesick from travel was a touch I really appreciated. In terms of amenities, the lounge goes above and beyond by far. There's a far too stimulating media room with 12 screens staring back at you. A bit too much for me, but if you're into it, I guess it's pretty cool. At this time, there's also a museum exhibit about Turkish Airlines' history, which I thoroughly enjoyed. If I had a bit more time, I would have spent more time here. I know it's just one room, but there's so much history to unpack. It was absolutely fantastic as an airline nerd. The lounge also has shower rooms, a library, a VR flight experience, a golf simulator, and a tea garden, but we were running a bit tight on time, so I didn't really get a chance to check those out. The only thing this lounge is missing is direct apron views, as this is unfortunately the best look you can get, and I think if you had some apron views, it would just be, a little bit better. Having spent too long chatting up our neighbors over tea, or hot chocolate in my case, we were running a little bit behind, and in true CreditVerse fashion, had to go on a brisk walk towards gate F12, which was an easy 10-minute walk away. We quickly realized that our airport workout was a little unnecessary as they hadn't even started boarding yet, even though the flight was due to depart in just under 35 minutes. People were starting to get a little bit confused and it started to surround the gate. This commotion gave me a few minutes to get some footage of our bird today, one of Turkish's 11 A350-900s, registered Tango Charlie, Lima Golf Charlie, in the airline's classic livery. If you look really closely though, you'll notice that this isn't actually the registration number on the side of the aircraft, and you'll see why in just a second. About 15 minutes later, boarding began, separated by group. Flying business class or having miles and smiles elite status, which is what Turkish calls their frequent flyer program, will allow you to board first, allowing you to settle in a bit before takeoff. We made it, kind of. They took the best part of my boarding pass, so very sad about that, but they made it through. Kirith has also made it through in one piece. He doesn't speak English though, so that might be a problem later on. Do you remember what seat number you were? Because I don't. 5. No. That is not the way. No. What's that, Adrian? Where have I gone? Yeah, that's a great question. I thought I was going in here. No, you go right? Oh, gotcha, okay. As we got onto the bus, I was pretty sure we just got Turkish. Getting Turkish, similar to getting Qatared, is a term used by travelers when they get equipment swapped on a Turkish Airlines flight, almost always to an inferior product. I was particularly certain we were in a bit of trouble here, because Turkish tends to operate the A330 to Berlin with a 222 configuration instead of the A350-900, which was operating just a few weekends during the springtime. Mercifully though, after a bus ride that felt like an hour, even though it was probably just about 5 minutes, I spotted the raccoon visor, or eyeliner as some would call it, of the A350, and I thanked my lucky stars that we'd actually get to find the product I had paid for. Boarding was done through the stairs this time, onto the 2L door. Turkish has 2 variants of this A350-900, with 4 airframes using an interior originally meant for Russian airline Aeroplan, and the remaining, such as this one, going for the Stelia Aerospace Symphony seats, draped in their signature business class colors of black and gold. This plane has 32 of these seats, arranged in a staggered 1-to-1 pattern across a single cabin. Of course, as with most of these products, the odd number seats alongside the sides of the plane are closer to the aisle, while the even numbered seats are close to the window and a bit more private. The E and F middle seats in the odd rows are closer together, perfect for couples or families flying together, while the D and G middle seats in the even rows are set a bit further apart. Our seat today is 6 Alpha, located closer to the window, but I'm a bit hesitant to call this a true window seat, as the shell on the side of the seat covers one of the windows, which is just a little unfortunate. It's pretty apparent that Turkish put a ton of effort to make this product work, and since we had a pretty comprehensive look at the lounge, let's continue the level of depth during our seat tour. Just as you sit down, you're greeted with the 18-inch IFE screen, which we'll dive into once we're in the air, under which, of course, you have the tray table that extends out like so. It's not winning any awards for stability, but should be more than sufficient for dining and getting some work done. It of course goes back to sitting flush with a bit of a push, allowing us to explore the rest of the footwell underneath it with ease. On first glance, this might be the narrowest I've seen in any wide-body business class, but appearances can certainly be deceiving. Under that, there's some storage for your shoes or small bags. Looking right, we'll arrive at the literature pocket, which has the safety card for this A350-900, and a coat hook right above it, although I suspect it'd be much more comfortable if you just asked the flight crew to stow your coat away in the closet, keeping it out of everybody's way. Seat controls are located on the side of your seat with these capacitive buttons that also allow you to control the lights and call the flight attendants if you have any concerns, as well as of course the headphone jack being on the side. You have a pretty respectable countertop here with a recessed area for your glass, a storage compartment for any of your small items, which also houses the noise cancelling headphones. Underneath you'll find the ubiquitous Panasonic remote we all know and love, which we'll use to operate the IFE later on. Lumbar support is known to be a bit of a weak point on these seats, and as such, TK provides a pillow in the same rose gold accent as the rest of the plane, and of course the shoulder strap you need for takeoff. You also have an adjustable headrest on your seat, making it pretty easy to get comfortable. The inside of the shell houses the reading light, which is incredibly bright and has 3 modes depending what seating position you're in. It's also lined with this Alcantara material, which is straight from a Lamborghini roofliner. It's not only nice to touch, but it also does help block some of the sound, even in the relatively quiet A350. Unlike with other carriers who have an A350, Turkish actually chose not to opt for the optional cathedral ceilings, which are just a middle luggage compartment delete, which somehow Airbus manages to get away with charging extra for. Thankfully, they also optioned the individual air vents. Of course, not super useful on the snowy weekend we departed, but otherwise a much welcome addition. Having been delayed for about 30 minutes at this point, the purses came by with welcome drinks, and I went for the classic lemon mint, which most carriers in the region have their own take on. Lemon mint finished, let's buckle up and start our departure out of Istanbul. With it being a shorter flight, I didn't really expect to see an amenity kit, and none was provided. I did ask for one from the flight crew in case they had a few extras, but unfortunately they just hadn't loaded any, so I don't have a chance to show you guys what it might look like.
You on repeat, you can see shit cause you have closed your eyes. You say you listen, but you're missing what it's all about. Rise up now. If you never fall, you don't change at all. Cry out now. Have you given up? I will never stop.
I am an iPad kid after all, therefore just as we reach cruising altitude, I try to connect to the in-flight Wi-Fi. It's free for business class passengers, verified by putting in your seat number and your last name. Since it was me flying, it definitely couldn't be that easy. The Wi-Fi just did not work for the entire time. I'm not sure why. I really wish I knew because I was really trying to get some work done. Anyways, on long haul flights, Turkish has a chef on board who makes sure all of the meals can compete with some of the best in the air. Although on shorter hops such as this one, there's a bit of a limited menu. For starters, I went for the buffalo mozzarella with grilled vegetables. It was served alongside some cheese and a side I can't actually seem to remember the name of. The starter was pretty solid as I finished the entire thing, even after my feast not 2 hours earlier. For my main, I want to go with something homey and I opted for the spicy chicken makhni, which for those unaware is just butter chicken and a fancier name. It too was pretty solid, not the most memorable, especially compared to the food I had in the lounge. Everything is also served on one tray, which again isn't super uncommon for these shorter flights, but something I just want to make you guys aware of. Other than dessert, which was this delicious chocolate trifle, a pretty simple yet excellent choice, I did feel a little bit let down by the meal service. This may be a function of my expectations being a bit too high, but the food was just good. Nothing incredible, especially for business class. I want to be clear that this is not the case for the longer haul flights, but considering it's still about a 3-hour flight where Middle Eastern airlines would have a full-fledged meal service, it was a little bit underwhelming. On a more positive note, let's crack on with the IFE review using the aforementioned Panasonic remote, which you can use as a second display for your flight map when it's set aside. There's many options for TV shows of so many different genres, just not as many box sets. The movie selection is also excellent. I know I'm not showing you what they are because I forgot to record that, but trust me, there's a ton of new releases and plenty of old classics. My favorite though, other than the external cameras, is the live TV. I was able to watch most of a game where Liverpool straight up destroyed Manchester City, which I did not enjoy being a Pep Guardiola fan. The coverage was a little bit laggy at times, but still very watchable, and considering the Wi-Fi wasn't working, I'm glad there was still some kind of connectivity to the ground. Moving into the sleeping experience, there was of course no bedding provided, but I still want to see what it would be like to lie flat. You can put the seat in lie flat mode by using the capacitive buttons on the side of the seat. Okay, now to being blasted with the energy from the surface of the sun. Let me kind of walk you through the seat. Sleeping mode. There's plenty of space for your feet, I'd say. If you're like taller, you might get into a bit of trouble, but I have my feet all the way extended and I'm still not fully touching the end. Privacy is very solid. I can't see anything around me. People around me can't see me. I'm trying to like extend this out so you can see as far as possible. I'd say it's pretty solid. It's a bit narrow, but not like the worst thing in the world. You can take this side down, that side down. Not entirely sure you can really see that. To get a bit more space, which I think is pretty good. Should be pretty decent. Admittedly, I have not flown this on a long haul flight yet. Something like over 7 hours I would really need to sleep. So I can't exactly testify to how comfortable it would be, but for a quick nap, I'm sure it'd be just fine. Yeah, also I love the Alcantara around it. I do think, instead of looking very nice, it does provide a solid amount of sound damping, which is something that I think a lot of seats maybe lack, other than the Finnair one, which I am reviewing very soon, so be sure to stay tuned for that one as well. Turkish also didn't go too far overboard with the lavatories either, sticking with what works, and that's completely fine. The standard A350 lab is pretty solid. One standout feature though was the bidet. Very nice. The rest of it was pretty standard though, as I mentioned. You have your hand and face cream, a somewhat working sink, and the lovely step to open garbage can that should just be a human right at this point on a plane. Before landing, the crew also came by with some snacks, in this case toasted hazelnuts. I'm not sure they knew I loved hazelnuts, but these were absolutely stellar. I was a huge fan. Again, I might be nitpicking here, but I do wish there was just a couple more options here, just because I want all the Turkish snacks I can get my hands on. With descent starting in a few minutes, let's go over some of my thoughts on the airline and this product. From arriving to the airport to getting out of the lounge, I have to say the entire ground experience is absolutely stellar. Forgive me for always comparing it to the Gulf carriers, but I really call this experience as close as you can possibly get. The next part is where you might find a bit of a gap: the onboard experience. First is the lack of fleet consistency and the fear you're going to get Turkished. I didn't know that I was going to be on the seat I booked until I physically stepped aboard the plane, because Turkish is notorious for these equipment swaps, and there's a huge gap between their product aboard the newer gen A350 and 787 and their fleet of 777s and A330s. The second is just the hard product is not as good as what Emirates and Qatar have. In fact, I would probably say it's even worse than what Singapore opts for on its long haul fleet, and they're about to entirely overhaul that fleet. It's not bad at all by any means, but just a step below. Clearly it's good enough for Eric Adams to fly, so who am I to complain? I'm also not sure if this was just my flight, but the crew were also not at the level of the other 5-star carriers I've flown. Again, this is just one flight, short haul, and a pretty miserable weather day, so I want to give as much the benefit of that as I can, just it wasn't as excellent and over the top as even my flights the next day on Brussels Air aboard their narrow body Euro business. That being said, putting all my thoughts together, I did have a great experience on board. I would certainly fly Turkish Airlines again, given the chance, especially as I haven't been able to experience a long haul product just yet. With that, I'm going to wrap up this review of Turkish and their A350. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to let me know down below what you want me to fly and record next. There are some fun ones upcoming in the pipeline, but I'm happy to hear your guys' thoughts. Until next time, stay safe.